Welcome to the Rebel Souls podcast, where we flip the middle finger to the status quo. I'm your host, Shelley Paxton, lifelong rebel, liberator of souls, and author of Soulbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life. Settle in as we dive deep with badass leaders who are rebelling for what matters most in life, business, and the world at large. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get this revolution started. Before we begin, I want to share an offering from my soul to yours. If you've achieved traditional success only to realize that you're living someone else's dream, then this will start you on a profound journey toward becoming chief soul officer of your own life, just like I did. I'm gifting you a free chapter from my book, Soulbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life. It's called Liberating from the Shackles of Should. And if you're ready to, then visit soulbatical.com to download it for free. That's SOULBATICAL.com. Warning, side effects include intense joy and fulfillment. Hello and welcome back, my fellow Rebel Souls. This is your OG Rebel Soul and host, Shelley. So good to be back with you. And you guys, it's the end of 2020. We made it. Just want to do like a little happy dance, a little celebration. For those of you who are seeing me on video, like I'm doing the little like shoulder shimmy. Yeah, let's celebrate that. It's been a long, hard year. There have been a lot of gifts in this year, but there's been a lot of tragedy and a lot of our lives being upended in so many ways. And I think we've talked about it, but this has been a year of reflection. I think it's really challenged a lot of us, whether we've been, the nature of our work has changed, or we've been laid off, or we've been furloughed, or our industry has been shaken to its core. There's so much that's happened this year. So I want to celebrate that we are resilient and we are strong. And we're also getting really clear on what matters most to us. Like, what do we not want to bring forward from the pre-COVID days into the post-COVID days? And what do we want to create? What do we want our lives to look like? What do we want the world to look like that we can all elevate and contribute to? So I can't think of a better way to end this first year. Actually, it's been a half a year. This podcast only started in August. I'm so excited, right? So what is that? August, September, October, November, December. We're 5 months into this puppy. And I'm jamming on it. This is my favorite thing. I tell you guys that all the time. And I love spending this time with you. So here's the thing. I cannot think of a better way to bring the interview episodes to a close than with this conversation with the amazing human and designer, Ayse Birsel. And the reason I say that is because Ayse may not be a household name. Some of you might know her products, but not know her. I'm a total architecture and design geek, which I confessed to her the first time I met her, and I say again in this conversation. And so I have followed her for a long time. She's Turkish born too, which I think is the first time I'd heard of her when I was living in Istanbul. That was way back in 96 to 2000. Yes, I'm totally dating myself. And I've just followed her work. She's worked for some really incredible brands. She's an industrial designer who's pretty much made her name in New York City. And she has done some really innovative product designs for companies from Toto, the bathroom company. She actually became famous and kind of known as the Queen of Toilets, and really innovative office design work for Herman Miller. And really, so many brands. I can name more for you. Renault and Staples and GE and IKEA and Amazon and Colgate-Palmolive. Like, she has done so many, she's had an imprint on so many of the brands that we know and we love. And so you might not have even known that she was like the brilliant design brain and influencer behind these innovative products in our lives. Some of her work is actually in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art at MoMA in New York City. And how fucking cool is that? So here's the thing. You're probably like, wait, okay, so why is this really important for us to be hanging on at the end of the year listening to this conversation with a product designer? Because here's the really cool thing. She talks about this moment in her life, and I'm not going to spoil it, but this moment in her life where things really started to fall apart. There was an economic recession, and she had to completely rethink her business. Sound familiar? Kind of like right now for so many of us. And she decided to really dissect what are her design principles and what if she applied those to her own life? What would that look like? And she suddenly realized that she had something on her, she had something that like this could be applied to the biggest projects that any of us will ever face, which are our lives. So she has these design principles. So she started doing workshops around them and people love them. So the Design the Life You Love workshops became Design the Life You Love book, and has really had many incarnations since then. And I won't spoil it and talk about where it's gone, but it's so amazing what she's creating. She's really helping us to deconstruct the elements of our lives, to think about them differently and get new perspective, and then to reconstruct them. She kind of talks us through those design principles and some of what that looked like in her life. And our conversation goes in so many fun directions. And I have to tell you, I mean, I've loved her work and I've loved everything she's stood for. But I didn't even realize until this conversation how many parallels there are in our lives and in our work. So much so that at the very end, she was like, we need to collaborate. Can you imagine? You guys listen to this and tell me what you think. Give me some feedback. But Design the Life You Love times Soulbatical sounds like a total win and like it needs to come to life in 2021. So you've got to listen to learn more about what Design the Life You Love means and how you can do that. But I hope you guys get from this some really good, a great framework and some really good nuggets to take into how you're thinking about what you want to create and the life you want to design in 2021 and beyond. This is one of those, yeah, some of us have hit rock bottom this year. Some of us have been forced to rethink everything. And this is a way to start coming out of that and think differently about what we want to create. And she gives us such a cool way to do it. I just love to dig inside and understand how her design brain works. And I'm so glad that her life events brought her to this place, sharing that perspective with us. And, I feel really honored because she's somebody who's really been at the top of her game for a long time and is now bringing it into all kinds of new spaces. She's out of products and into designing lives and designing, well, many other things. And she's actually working on a new book. So you have to listen to the end to hear about that one. But it's so cool. I mean, she's got, like I said, she has been a recognized thinker. She's been recognized by Fast Company, one of my favorite magazines, as one of the most creative people in business. I mean, like I said, her work is in MoMA and on and on. She's worked for so many of those iconic brands that I mentioned. So this woman knows what she's doing, and she's helping us kind of take a framework and apply it to our own lives. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I feel like this feels like a very cool way to end 2020. Hopefully really good fodder for you as you go forward. But you guys, again, we made it. We're at the end. And I'm choosing, one of her principles is optimism. And I'm choosing to be very optimistic. I think there's hope with vaccines on the horizon and all these things that we can create a really effing amazing year in 2021. And we can do it together, supporting each other and rebelling for lives we love. So, with that, let's dig into the conversation with Ayse. Enjoy. Hey, Ayse, it's so good to talk to you again. And I'm honored that you're coming to have a conversation with me on Rebel Souls. Welcome.
Shelley, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, you have been. I told you this in our first conversation. We were introduced through a mutual friend, Marcus Leto, and you and Marcus had done some work in the past. Marcus and I have been friends for, oh God, over a quarter of a century, probably over 25 years since I lived in Istanbul from what, 96 to 2000. So I'm dating myself. It was a long time ago. But I remember he mentioned that he had worked with you. And I said, I have always, like, I'm a secret, maybe a not so secret architecture and design geek. It's the stuff I freak out on. I live in an old garment factory and I love design stuff. And so you're somebody who's been on my radar for a long time. And so I was so honored to get the introduction and that you said yes to having this conversation because I really, really admire your work and I'm excited to dive into it.
Thank you. And thank you, Marcus, for bringing us together. Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you and I hit it off. It just was meant to be.
exactly. And you know what? None of this is a coincidence, right? This is the way the universe goes. And then I was able to introduce you and Chip Conley to talk about some stuff in sort of the aging space that we'll get into later. I mean, this is how it works, right? Like-minded souls are finding each other and we're furthering good work in the world. So you know that we're going
Lovely.
to have an amazing conversation and it's the beginning of a lifelong friendship. And I start every conversation with the same question. I want to know, what are you rebelling for?
So I love thinking about myself as a rebel, and I'm rebelling for everyone to design the life they love. So to design an original life for themselves.
Mm,
How about
I
that?
Yeah, I love it. And this is what I told you earlier. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to get into because I'm so intrigued by your journey to get to this place where you're rebelling, for people designing the life they love, because it's a fascinating journey. You are widely recognized. And if I could say so, like kind of a celebrity in the design space because you've done amazing work in the like for Herman Miller and for Knoll and for Toto and for all these really big brands. And now you're doing a completely different kind of design work. And you're talking about designing lives and businesses and experiences that people love. So, can we unpack that a little bit? Like, what led you to go from being this kind of, recognized designer? You've been celebrated as, one of Fast Company's most creative people in business, widely recognized for your industrial design talents. What was the pivot to helping people design the life they love?
So how did Ayse, who grew up in Turkey as this girl who listened to her parents, turn into a design rebel? Yeah, good question.
Yes, an
I mean,
amazing reframe. Thank you for that.
yeah. Also because I mean, you've lived in Turkey, so you know how Turkish families work, right? And
And
we're
and even
very
more than that, Ayse, my ex-husband, I ended up marrying a Turk. I think I mentioned that to you in our first conversation. He was
right.
from Izmir, which is your hometown, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we're we're brought up, even though I grew up in a family that was very you know my parents really believed in me, and in a way they were very feminist in their approach, and they taught me to be this strong, independent young woman, but at the same time, like, you're supposed to listen to us, you know. I
Yep.
did until I didn't.
Well, wait. Okay, wait. Let's just dig into that a little bit. So, how did you even get into design in the first place? So, from that, I'm guessing your parents weren't like they were supporting you as the strong independent woman, but they probably weren't saying go do the design thing. So, where did that like your love of design and how you stepped into design, like where did that come from? Was that your first rebellious act?
Kind of. So I come from a family of lawyers, and so, and it's, you know, my dad, my uncle, my aunts from both sides of the family. So um, my great uncle, that was, I think, my path based on like what the family had been doing. But I love to draw, and I thought, I can't be a lawyer and like draw and create. So then my first kind of rebellion was I want to be an architect. And then a family friend came to tea and then taught me about industrial design for the first time, and I fell in love with the human scale of design. And I thought, oh, no, actually, I want to be an industrial designer. And it so happened that in Turkey at Middle East Technical University at ODTÜ, they had just started this department, industrial design, and it hadn't even given any graduates yet. I was the third year kind of
Oh, wow.
uh, class, and that's how I became an industrial designer.
When you say you fell in love with human scale design, I'm so curious, like, what does that mean to you? Like, yeah, I'm just curious. What's a good example of like, oh, that's the thing that was there a particular design, a particular product, a particular story
Yeah,
around that for you?
Shelley, I might let me show it to you exactly like it was shown to
Yes.
me. So it was
Yes.
so we were having tea, and this family friend who was an urban designer said to me, "Do you know about product design, industrial design?" I was like, "No." And I was like 15 at the time. He said, Look at this teacup." And it was kind of like a teacup that this teacup looks like a teacup that my mother might have had. And he said, "Look, you see how the edge is curved? It's so that it fits in our lips better, and that
Mm.
it has this kind of handle so that we can hold hot liquid in our hands without burning ourselves. And then it has this saucer so that, and I actually spilled my tea, you can see, so that if you spill your tea, you don't ruin your mother's tablecloth. This is like somebody designed this. This is industrial design. And that's where I fell in love with the human scale, because everything related to us, like to our lips, our hands, my mother's tablecloth. And that felt like so human and humanistic to me.
I love that. That's so powerful. And I love that you have like your traditional china. I always associate like tea drinking with my time and my experience in Turkey. It's so much a part of socializing and connecting with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so take us forward in the story. So, okay, now you become this industrial designer. You're one of the first three graduating classes from Middle Eastern Technical University. And did that take you to New York? Am I right in that?
So that took me to New York in the sense that I had this internal drive, this belief that I am going to live in New York. And Shelley, if you ask me why, I don't know. I just knew it. Like you sometimes know these things, right?
Yep.
And so when I graduated, I told my parents, well, now I want to go to New York and do my master's. And they looked at me, they were like, what? You know, you're only 20 years old. Like, we don't think New York is like the right place. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to get myself to New York. And so then I applied for a Fulbright scholarship and got it. And
Wow.
so I told my parents, by the way, I am going to New York. I got the scholarship. And they were like, I think they were so proud and sad at the same time. It was, and now I can totally relate to it because now I have kids and I know how that feels like to let your child go all the way, to the other side of the world. And at the time, New York was really known as, it was a dangerous place. So, but I landed here and went to go to Pratt Institute. So that was my trajectory from Izmir to Ankara to New York.
I love it. So, New York is a place that's really close to my heart. I lived there for 4 years, actually, right after I moved from Istanbul to New York City. And I have a little confession to make. So, I forgot that you had gone to Pratt. And by the way, Fulbright scholarship, amazing. And so I went to New York to
Thank you.
work for AOL that became AOL Time Warner. And I was in a big strategy job there. And I lasted for about 3.5 years. And then I was just like, this is not the place for me. I was starting to reconsider everything in my life. And one of the things, I lived in Fort Greene, Brooklyn at the time, right around the corner from Pratt. And one of the
Oh
things I
my
started
God.
looking into was taking architecture and design courses at Pratt. Ultimately, I didn't go in that direction, but like I could feel that energy just being in that space, and I was in love with that school. So that's my little common connection secret to share with you.
I feel like we had all these almost met each other kind of possibilities, right? It's
100%, a hundred
yeah.
percent. Yeah. Yeah. So I love your story. Talk about, so then you went on to do like all of this incredible design work for these really big brands, some of which I named earlier. You became this kind of, you became like the face of industrial design in a lot of ways, really known for, especially, what did they call you? Were you called like the queen of toilets or something like that?
Shelley, you've really done your research well. I was known as the queen of toilets for a while, and I took that as a compliment when I designed a toilet seat for Toto. And Toto is the world's number one manufacturer of bathroom products, and they were planning their entry into the American market. And I got to design the product, kind of like to put them on the map in the States with an innovative and useful product. And that was the Toto Washlet, which is this, it's known unofficially, it's known as the world's most comfortable toilet seat because I designed it like a chair with a hole in it. And by the way, it also has a bidet function, so it has a little shower inside it. And so it was one of the first products of its kind, of that kind, to come into the American market.
I love it. And as I'm a huge fan of Toto toilets, and I've seen like the ultimate in Toto toilets as well, like in traveling to Japan, and the ones that
Yeah.
have like so many functions, you're like, I don't even know which button to push and what's going to happen. But I sort of have fallen in love with their products, and I know exactly the one that you designed.
Yeah, that
So
was a
I
lot of fun. Not everybody gets to design toilet seats, and so I really loved that project. And I lived in Japan for like a year, designing for them, and then came back to the States with the product. So that was very much a part of my formation. I used to call that my military service because I mean, I love Japan to bits, and but at the time, I was this young woman living in Japan, and being a young woman at the time, a designer and a foreigner. It was like the trifecta of difficulties. So that was a very good training for me.
I love that. I love that. So then you go on to, you ultimately met your husband through your design work too, didn't you?
I did through a project, a concept car that I designed for Renault, the French automobile manufacturer.
Oh, wow. And that's become a design partnership. So it's not only a life partnership, it's also a design partnership, right?
It is a design partnership. So um, after Toto, I was introduced to Herman Miller, which was amazing. And
I'm
then,
such a Herman Miller geek. Yes.
yeah. So, um, 20 years later, I mean, we've been collaborating for 20 years now, and it's just been amazing. But part of the reason that the people at Herman Miller wanted to work with me was because they felt like, oh, if like this woman can design innovative toilet seats for Toto and work with their engineers and convince them of their idea of her ideas, what she can do for us and how she can work with our engineers. And at the time, I didn't really have any experience in designing offices, and they saw that as a plus. And so that's like, I love that, because that goes to show you most companies look for like, oh, has she done this before? Herman Miller's approach was, we actually like that she knows nothing about our business, so she's going to think about it from kind of from scratch and have an outsider's perspective. And so that was my beginning with Herman Miller.
I love that. Can I just say, so I was hired at Harley for exactly the same reason. The fact that I had no automotive and no motorcycling experience, and I wasn't even a rider when I first went to the company. They wanted all of that fresh perspective and my global experience and the other skills and insights that I could bring to the table. So, what a great reminder to all of us that it's not necessarily about this very linear path. It's about bringing this fresh perspective and kind of mixing and mashing these ideas with the talents that you bring to the table. And you're a great example of that. Because
Yeah,
you've not only did it with Herman Miller and other brands, now you're doing it in a completely different kind of quote unquote design space, right?
in a completely different design space. And that's actually, um, you know,